My name is Camille Davenport. I'm 34, and I work as a senior finance manager for a consulting firm in downtown Boston. On paper, my life looks stable, even enviable. But anyone who has ever been treated like a walking wallet by their own family knows how deceiving appearances can be. Before I take you inside this story, let me ask for something small. If you've ever felt pressured by family or had to set hard boundaries yourself, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your support helps stories like mine reach the people who feel most alone. Marino's Steakhouse glittered that night. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across polished tables and stemmed glasses, each sparkle reminding me how much this place cost compared to my weekly grocery bill. The host had ushered us to a long table near the center of the dining room, the kind of spot where every laugh, every raised glass could be overheard by the tables around us. Exactly the stage my father preferred. It was his 60th birthday. Richard Davenport, retired entrepreneur, still clinging to the aura of success he'd built decades ago. He wore a navy blazer stretched over his broad frame, his gold watch gleaming each time he lifted his hand to punctuate a story. Beside him, my mother Linda adjusted the pearl necklace she'd bought herself last spring, a purchase she'd justified with the words, "Camille won't mind. She always helps out." Across from me, Chloe, 28, scrolled through her phone until the server approached. She flicked her hair back dramatically, as though cameras followed her. "I think I'll take the lobster. Is it flown in fresh? Yes? Perfect. Put that down." She didn't look at the price, but I did. $65. My stomach tightened. Next to her, Ethan leaned in with an eager grin. At 26, my younger brother had a boyish charm he still wielded like a weapon. "The deluxe sushi platter," he said. "For two." He chuckled. "But I'll take it solo tonight. Birthday parties call for indulgence." $78. The numbers clicked in my head like beads sliding on an abacus. I hadn't even ordered yet, but I could already feel the weight of their choices pressing down on me. When the server's pen hovered over me, I kept my voice steady. "Just the cedar plank salmon, please." $32. The cheapest entree on the menu. Chloe smirked at me over her water glass. "Still frugal, huh? That's our Camille. Miss Responsible." I gave a tight smile and said nothing. The bottle of wine arrived, $45 a glass, my sister's choice. My father clapped his hands together, cheeks flushed from earlier rounds. "Now this is a celebration. To family." He lifted his glass high, but when his eyes swept around the table, they skimmed past me. I sipped my water, thinking of my savings account, of the second-hand furniture waiting back in my South End apartment, of the retirement fund I'd been carefully building while my family treated me as their personal sponsor. Plates arrived, steam rising, flavors rich. The laughter grew louder. Dad told a story about his golf game, Mother chimed in about shopping deals, Chloe bragged about her latest brand partnership in New York, Ethan described the watch he had his eye on. Not once did anyone ask about my work. Not once did they ask how I was. Halfway through the meal, as I pushed salmon around my plate, I caught Chloe's eye again. She leaned close enough for only our table to hear. "Relax, Camille. You've got it covered, don't you? You're practically our corporate sponsor." Her voice carried just enough to make two women at the next table glance over. Laughter erupted around me, everyone except me. Something hardened in my chest. 3 years. 3 years of being expected to pay, of quiet resentment, of calculating bills while everyone else indulged without a word of thanks. Tonight, something in me snapped into place. Not anger exactly, but a steel-cold certainty. I waited until dessert plates were cleared, until the last glass of wine was drained, until the moment the server slipped the black leather folder onto the table. The air shifted, subtle but clear, as 4 sets of eyes turned toward me. My pulse thudded, but my hands were steady. I opened the folder, scanned the bill. $982. My father's gaze lingered, expectant. Chloe tapped her nails on the table. Ethan leaned back, smirking, confident. I reached into my purse, pulled out my wallet, and slid my card toward the server. "Charge me for the salmon and 1 glass of wine. I said clearly. The server blinked. "Excuse me?" I repeated, louder this time, my voice cutting through the chatter around us. "Charge me only for what I ordered. 32 for the salmon, 12 for the wine. That's it." The table froze. "What are you doing?" my father demanded, his voice sharp. "Paying my share," I said. My tone was calm, deliberate. "Nothing more." The server looked uncertain, glancing toward the bar. Right on cue, Jim Howard, the manager and Tyler's old college friend, approached. His voice was smooth, professional. "Ms. Davenport's request has been arranged. Here is the adjusted bill." He laid a separate slip of paper in front of my father. "And Mr. Davenport, here is the remaining balance for the family's order." A visible flush crept up my father's neck. His hand twitched toward the bill, then stopped, as though the leather folder were radioactive. Chloe's eyes widened, disbelief breaking through her polished expression. "Are you kidding me right now?" Ethan laughed nervously. "Good one, Camille. But seriously." I met his gaze head-on. "I'm completely serious." Silence stretched, thick as molasses. Around us, forks paused mid-air at neighboring tables. People were listening, watching. My mother's voice wavered, pitched low but urgent. "Sweetheart, this isn't the time. We'll talk later. Just put your card down like always." "No," I said. The word tasted like freedom. "Not this time. Not ever again." Chloe slammed her hand against the table, silver rings clinking. "You're embarrassing us! In front of everyone!" The irony almost made me laugh, as if humiliation hadn't been my silent companion for years, while they spent freely under the assumption I'd pick up the check. "I'm not embarrassing us," I replied, my voice carrying farther than I intended. "I'm telling the truth. For 3 years, I've paid for every birthday, every holiday, every just because dinner, and not one of you has ever asked if it was okay. You just assumed, well, I'm done." Gasps rippled around the table nearest us. My father's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening around his fork. "You ungrateful child," he hissed. "After everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me?" I interrupted. My words were low but steady, each syllable sharp as glass. "Besides treating me like your personal ATM?" For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The only sound was the clinking of cutlery at distant tables. The server returned with my receipt. I signed, slid the copy into my purse, and stood. "I'm finished," I said, steady enough that even I was surprised. My chair scraped against the polished floor as I pushed it back. Conversations in the restaurant had quieted. I felt dozens of eyes on me as I walked toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Chloe's sharp whisper, Ethan's muttered curse, my mother's frantic, "Richard, do something," and my father's low growl of frustration. But I didn't turn back. The glass doors of Marino's opened into the cool Boston night, the air sharp against my flushed skin. As they closed behind me, the noise of the restaurant muffled into a distant hum. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Tyler's message lit the screen. "Did you do it?" I typed back with trembling fingers. "Yes, I'm done." And for the first time in years, I believed it. The heavy glass doors of Marino's shut behind me, muffling the hum of laughter and clinking glasses. Outside, Boston night air hit me sharp and damp, carrying the salt of the harbor mixed with the faint tang of rain on asphalt. The drizzle had turned steady, each drop hissing as it met the hood of my old Honda Civic parked under a flickering streetlight. I gripped my purse tighter, my heels clicking across the slick pavement. For a second, my legs trembled. Not from fear, but from the release of holding myself upright inside that restaurant. My heart still beat like a drum against my ribs, as if it hadn't realized the scene was over. Sliding into the driver's seat, I shut the door and exhaled. The silence inside this car was almost deafening after the noise of the dining room. Raindrops streaked down the windshield, glowing orange beneath the sodium lamps. They looked like tiny stars falling in fast motion. My phone buzzed on the console. The family group chat lit up, their words stacking faster than I could read. "Chloe, where are you? This isn't funny." "Ethan, the manager's standing here waiting. Seriously, What the hell? Mom. Camille, answer me right now. You're humiliating your father. Dad. This behavior is unacceptable. Get back in here and do your part. I didn't answer. I watched the screen light fade, then light again, like a beacon of their outrage. Another buzz. This time it was Tyler. Did you do it? My lips curled into the smallest smile. Yes, I'm outside. I walked out. His reply came fast. Proud of you. Don't go back. Not this time. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel, breathing in the faint scent of old leather and rain. For years, I had driven home from dinners like this with a hollow ache, tallying up totals in my head, wishing someone had simply said thank you. Tonight, for the first time, I wasn't carrying that weight. The check and the responsibility belonged to them. But freedom has its own sting. Shame, guilt, and a strange loneliness gnawed at me as I sat in the car. I could picture their faces. Dad's flush of anger, Chloe's widened eyes, Mom's desperate dab at her pearls, Ethan's nervous laugh. They weren't wondering if I was okay. They were furious that I'd broken the unspoken contract. My phone lit up again. Mom's name. I silenced it. A voicemail came through seconds later, her voice tight with tears. We've always been there for you, Camille. Family sticks together. Why are you doing this? I wanted to scream back, because sticking together shouldn't mean me paying for everyone's life. Instead, I let the message play into the quiet cabin until it ended, then deleted it. Rain tapped harder, blurring the windshield until the world outside became smears of orange and gray. I sat up straight, turned the key just far enough for the radio to hum, then shut it off again. The engine could wait. Tonight, I needed the stillness. I typed one more message to Tyler. I'm not going back inside. I'm finished. Finally finished. And when I hit send, I believed it. By the time I pulled into my building in Boston's South End, the rain had slowed to a mist. Streetlights cast long reflections on the wet pavement, and the hum of passing cars faded as I parked. My apartment windows glowed faintly on the second floor. A modest space, nothing flashy, but mine. A place I'd chosen deliberately when everyone told me to upgrade, to flaunt success. Inside, the quiet wrapped around me like a blanket. I slipped off my heels by the door, hung my damp blazer on the hook, and set my purse on the counter. The silence felt different tonight, less lonely, more like a pause between battles. I didn't bother turning on the TV. Instead, I walked straight to my desk, where my laptop waited. The screen came alive with a familiar spreadsheet file. Family expenses, XLSX. The rows stretched endlessly, each line a memory. I scrolled. Mother's Day brunch, $342, Ethan's job interview celebration, $538, Dad's retirement party, $1,890, Christmas Eve at Capitol Grill, $650, Chloe's new chapter dinner after her breakup, $400, on and on. The totals grew until the last cell at the bottom glared up at me, $18,150. I leaned back in my chair, running my hands over my face. That number wasn't just dollars. It was hours of overtime, weekends sacrificed, vacations postponed. It was my future, siphoned into meals no one remembered, except for the taste of champagne. The sound of my phone buzzing pulled me back. Another flood of group chat notifications. I didn't open them. Instead, I tapped the voicemail icon. My father's voice growled through the speaker. Camille, you've embarrassed this family. Call me back immediately. Delete. Then Mom's softer tone. Sweetheart, don't let one dinner ruin everything. We've always been there for you. Delete. I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed, then closed my eyes. Always been there? I thought of the nights I helped Chloe cover her rent when she was between brand deals. The car repair I'd quietly paid for Ethan, the mortgage payment I'd slipped to Mom and Dad during Dad's investment hiccup. Always there. For them. Camille? Tyler's voice called from the doorway. I turned to see him leaning against the frame, his hair damp from the drizzle, a grocery bag in his hand. I figured you wouldn't feel like cooking. He set the bag down, pulling out a carton of Thai takeout. The smell of basil and chili filled the room. How'd it go? He asked gently, though he already knew. I laughed, short and bitter. Picture a firing squad with wine glasses. He raised his eyebrows. And I told them no. I gestured to the spreadsheet. 3 years, Ty, $18,450, all of it on me. And tonight, I finally told them to pay their own damn way. Pride flickered in his smile, but he didn't rush to pat me on the back. Instead, he set 2 cartons on the table and slid into the chair across from me. You needed to, but they won't let it go easily. I clicked open another folder on my desktop, receipts and recordings. Inside were PDFs of credit card statements, screenshots of texts, and a handful of audio files. I hovered over one, then pressed play. Chloe's voice filled the room, recorded last Thanksgiving when she thought I wasn't in earshot. Don't worry about the wine. Camille makes good money. She'll cover it. Tyler winced. Ouch. I've been collecting these for months, I admitted. Part of me hoped I'd never need them, but I knew tonight was coming. For a moment we sat in silence, the weight of it pressing heavy. Tyler reached across the table, his hand covering mine. So what's the plan? I met his eyes. I'm done carrying them. Next time they show up at my door, I'll show them everything. Every number, every word, and then I'll draw the line. My voice cracked at the end, not from doubt, but from release. For years, I had whispered my frustrations only to myself. Now, saying it out loud felt like slamming a door shut. Tyler squeezed my hand. Then I'll be right here, when the storm hits. The storm. He was right. Tonight was only the spark. The fire was coming. I closed the laptop and pushed the spreadsheet aside, but the number still burned in my mind. 18,450. It wasn't just what they owed me, it was what I owed myself. Respect, boundaries, freedom. And for the first time, I was ready to collect. By Sunday morning, the quiet I'd been clinging to shattered. The doorbell buzzed, long and insistent, vibrating through my small South End apartment like an alarm clock I couldn't silence. I froze mid-sip of coffee, my mug trembling in my hand. The buzzing didn't stop. I padded across the hardwood floor, my socks sliding a little, and peered through the peephole. 4 figures crowded the narrow hallway. Dad's jaw shifted side to side, the telltale sign he was grinding his teeth. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief embroidered with tiny blue flowers, ironically, the one Grandma left her. Ethan shifted awkwardly on his feet, hands jammed into his jacket pockets. Chloe stood front and center, tapping the doorbell again with her manicured finger like she was ringing for a servant. I could have pretended not to be home, could have let them stew in the hallway until they gave up, but I knew them. They'd keep coming back. And I was done running. I slid the deadbolt and opened the door. Chloe breezed past me without waiting for an invitation, perfume and entitlement trailing after her. Nice place, she said flatly, her eyes scanning my modest living room like it was a motel. Mom followed, sighing dramatically, lowering herself into my reading chair with her purse perched on her lap like a wounded pet. Dad entered last, giving me a curt nod before pacing along my bookshelf as if inspecting for dust. Ethan trailed, hovering near the doorway, shoulders hunched as though ready to bolt. I stayed standing. So, I said, crossing my arms. Here we are. Dad turned, eyes flashing. What were you thinking Friday night? You embarrassed us in public. The manager had to come to the table. People were staring. His voice climbed with every word, anger barely leashed. Mom jumped in, her tone syrupy but sharp underneath. Camille, we've always been there for you. And this is how you repay us? By storming out and humiliating your father on his birthday? Chloe's laugh was harsh. Over one dinner, Camille? Seriously? You threw a tantrum and walked out like some dramatic teenager. Do you know how ridiculous you looked? The words pelted me like stones. For a moment, the old urge rose, to smooth things over, to apologize, to keep the peace. But I'd rehearsed this moment. I straightened my spine. I've paid for almost every gathering in the last 3 years, I said, voice steady though my palms burned. Birthdays, holidays, even random nights out. Nobody asked if I could, you all just assumed. That wasn't generosity anymore, it was expectation. And I'm not doing it anymore. Silence dropped, heavy and electric. Dad stopped pacing. Mom froze mid-dab of her eyes. Even Chloe's practiced eye roll faltered. Before anyone could recover, I walked to my desk. From the drawer, I pulled a folder and set it firmly on the coffee table. The papers inside had weight beyond their paper. Months of receipts, statements, notes, proof. I opened it to the first page and slid it toward them. Mother's Day brunch, $342. Flip. Ethan's job interview celebration, $538. Flip. Dad's retirement party, $1,190. Flip. Christmas Eve, Capitol Grill, $650. I kept going, page after page, each one a mirror they couldn't avoid. At the back, a final sheet, total $18,450, highlighted in yellow. Chloe's face flushed red. You actually tracked all this? God, Camille, that's pathetic. I didn't flinch. Instead, I pressed a button on my laptop, connected to the TV. A recording played through the speakers, Chloe's voice from Thanksgiving. Don't worry about the wine. Camille makes good money. She'll cover it. Her mouth fell open. Where did you... Another clip played. Mom's text to Chloe projected on the screen. Don't stress about the Gucci bag. Camille will handle the dinner anyway. Mom gasped, clutching her pearls. That was private! No, I said, my voice like ice. That was proof. Ethan shifted, staring at the carpet, shame creeping into his expression. Dad's face darkened crimson. You're digging up dirt like some prosecutor. This is family, Camille, not a courtroom. I met his glare head-on. Family doesn't use one member like an ATM. Family respects boundaries. You've all treated me like I owe you my paycheck. Well, I don't. For the first time, Ethan spoke. Quietly, almost to himself. She's right. Dad's head snapped toward him. What did you say? Ethan lifted his chin, voice firmer now. She's right. We've all leaned on her too much. A crack opened in the wall of denial. Chloe crossed her arms, eyes darting away. Mom whispered, Ethan? Like she couldn't believe he'd defect. I leaned forward, palms pressed to the coffee table. This ends now. I'm not paying another dime for dinners, birthdays, bags, or parties. I'm done. The room vibrated with the weight of it. My declaration. My line in the sand. Dad's hands curled into fists. You'll regret this. Don't think you're better than us. I'm not better, I said softly. I'm just finished being used. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Chloe grabbed her purse and stood, muttering curses under her breath. Mom clutched her handkerchief like it could hold her together. Ethan lingered, torn. Dad marched to the door, his parting words sharp as a blade. Your mother raised you better than this. I held his gaze. She raised me to respect myself, too. The door slammed. Silence followed, deep and ringing. And in that silence, for the first time in years, I felt free. The slam of the door still echoed in my chest long after they left my apartment. I thought that confrontation might end things, but instead, it cracked something open. And cracks have a way of spreading. 2 days later, I found myself across from my parents again, not because I wanted to, but because Mom called me at work with a trembling voice I'd never heard from her before. Please, Camille, your father needs to talk to you, tonight. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not at my place this time. They suggested the house in Newton, the home I grew up in, where the walls still smelled faintly of lemon polish and Dad's cigars. When I walked in, the living room felt smaller than I remembered, suffocating even. Chloe perched on the arm of the sofa, scrolling her phone but not really reading. Ethan leaned against the fireplace, jaw tight. Mom sat stiffly in her favorite chair, hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. Dad paced, blazer still on though it was nearly 9 at night. He didn't waste time. You've made things difficult for this family, Camille, he started, voice rougher than usual. And I can't stand by and let you destroy everything we've built. I crossed my arms. Destroy what? I stopped paying for dinners. That's not destruction, it's boundaries. Something flickered across his face, fear, then anger. He barked, You think those dinners were about food? They were about keeping up appearances, about showing we're still strong. Do you even know what that means? Chloe finally looked up, her tone impatient. Dad, just tell her. She's not going to stop asking. I turned sharply. Tell me what? Mom whispered, almost too soft to hear. Richard. But Dad's temper snapped. Fine. You want the truth? You're so eager to count receipts. Here's one you didn't track. I lost nearly all of our savings 3 years ago. Florida condos. The market collapsed before I could sell. Everything gone. The words crashed into me like cold water. My breath caught. What? His jaw clenched. That's why I needed you to step up. That's why I let you cover things. We couldn't show weakness. Not to friends, not to anyone. The room spun for a moment. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. All those nights, me agonizing over bills, him ordering the most expensive steak in the house. So while you paraded around in new watches and golf trips, you were broke? He glared. I wasn't broke. I was buying time, respect, dignity. Ethan cut in, his voice tight with disbelief. At her expense? Chloe's smirk faltered. For once, she didn't have a retort ready. I stepped closer, heat rising in my chest. Do you hear yourself? You used me. You hid your failure and shoved the burden onto my shoulders so you could play the successful patriarch. Mom finally broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. Richard, how could you? She deserves better than that. He turned on her, wounded pride twisting his features. I did it for this family. For you. So no one would whisper that we lost everything. I carried the shame so you didn't have to. My voice cracked, but I didn't look away. No, Dad, you handed the shame to me. Every time a server dropped the bill, every time Chloe laughed and said I'd pay, every time Ethan looked away, I carried it. Alone. The room fell into silence. Even the old clock on the mantel seemed to pause between ticks. Chloe spoke first, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. So all this time, you were broke, and Camille was the one holding us up? Dad said nothing. His eyes darted to the floor. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, muttering, Jesus Christ. I steadied myself, drawing in a long breath. You should have told me the truth, Dad. I could have respected honesty. I can't respect manipulation. He sank into the armchair across from me, suddenly looking older, smaller. For once, the weight of his pride couldn't hold him upright. I picked up my bag, slinging it over my shoulder. I'm done being your safety net. If you want to rebuild, do it honestly, without me footing the bill. No one stopped me as I walked out, not even Mom. And in the crisp night air of Newton, I realized something terrifying and liberating. The man I had feared disappointing all my life was nothing more than a fragile lie held together by my silence. The night I walked out of the Newton house, the truth about Dad's collapse still rang in my ears. His empire wasn't solid. It was sand. And I had been the scaffolding holding it up without even knowing. 2 days later, I found myself staring at Chloe's name lighting up my phone. My first instinct was to let it ring, to protect the fragile quiet I'd finally carved out. But curiosity won, I answered. Camille? Her voice was tentative, almost brittle, not the Chloe who usually filled every silence with swagger. What is it? I asked, bracing myself. I wanted to talk, alone, not at Mom and Dad's. Her request startled me. Why? A long pause. Because maybe you're not the only one who got used. We met at a cafe in Back Bay, neutral ground where the hum of espresso machines could cover awkward silences. She showed up in oversized sunglasses, though it was cloudy, and sat across from me with a latte she barely touched. You were right, she said finally, eyes fixed on the foam. About Dad, about me, about everything. I waited. She exhaled sharply. I broke up with Ryan last week. You remember him? Mr. Perfect Smile, always bragging about his crypto. Turns out he was using me, not for love, for my following, my connections, and my money. Every time he wanted to look impressive at some party, guess whose card he handed over? Her laugh was sharp and humorless. Sound familiar? A pang hit me, anger at him, at her, at the mirror she was holding up. "So now you know how it feels." Her head snapped up. "Don't think I'm asking for pity. When Dad went off about his investments, about appearances, I realized Ryan was the same. They both cared more about the image than the person paying the bill." Her voice wavered. "And I acted just like them. Toward you." For once, Chloe wasn't mocking or deflecting. She was raw. "You laughed while I paid," I reminded her softly. "You told your friends not to worry because Camille's got it. Do you have any idea how that felt?" Tears rimmed her eyes, threatening her mascara. She nodded. "I do now, and I hate myself for it." I didn't forgive her, not yet, but a thread of understanding pulled taut between us. Later that week, it was Ethan who reached out. A text, short and hesitant. "Sis, can we meet? Just us." We sat on a bench along the Charles River. The city skyline stretched behind us. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes. "I should have backed you up sooner," he said. But every time Dad glared at me, I shut down. I didn't want to be next on his list. "Ethan," I began, but he held up a hand. "No, let me say it. I watched you carry everyone. I knew it wasn't right, and I stayed quiet because it was easier. That makes me a coward." He dragged a hand through his hair, eyes wet. "But when Dad admitted everything, I couldn't stay silent anymore. You didn't just save yourself, Camille. You forced us to see the truth too." I swallowed hard, the wind tugging at my coat. For years, I'd painted Ethan as the harmless sibling, the one caught in the middle. But maybe he was braver than I gave him credit for, speaking when it mattered most, even if late. "Dad's not going to change easily," he added. "But I want to, and I want to be on your side this time." The river shimmered in the fading light, waves breaking against the bank like applause. I looked at my brother, then thought of Chloe's trembling voice at the cafe. Cracks had opened in our family, but through those cracks, light was slipping in. For the first time in years, I felt something fragile but real. Not hope for Dad, not yet, but hope that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone anymore. When I left Ethan on the riverbank, I knew the conversation with Dad wasn't over. His confession had cracked the facade, but cracks don't bring down walls, not in my family. They rebuild the lie with stronger mortar, unless someone stops them. That someone had to be me. So a week later, I called for a meeting. Not at Marino's, not at Newton, but at my apartment. Neutral ground. My ground. If they wanted to face me, they'd have to step into my world, the modest 2-bedroom I'd chosen for comfort, not show. They came in waves. Mom first, wearing a silk scarf like armor, eyes darting around as if taking inventory. Chloe next, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, her smile faint but strained. Ethan lingered near the doorway, giving me a nod I returned. Then Dad, last as always, filling the room with his presence before he even spoke. We sat around my small dining table. No chandeliers, no crystal glasses, just ceramic mugs of coffee I'd brewed myself. For once, silence pressed down heavier than chatter. Dad broke it. "Let's stop this nonsense, Camille. You made your point. You're upset. But it's time to move on. Families don't keep score." My chest tightened, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "I'm not keeping score, Dad. I'm setting limits. There's a difference." He scoffed, waving his hand. "Semantics. You've always been dramatic." I didn't argue. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a single folded sheet of paper. I laid it flat in the center of the table, sliding it toward him. "What's this?" Mom asked, her voice brittle. "My terms," I said. "If you want me at family gatherings, if you want a relationship with me, this is the boundary." Dad snatched the paper, unfolding it with sharp movements. His eyes darted down the list, his complexion darkening with every line. 1. Everyone pays their own share at dinners and celebrations. 2. Acknowledgement of the financial imbalance of the past 3 years. 3. No requests for money unless formalized as a loan with terms agreed in writing. Mom leaned over his shoulder, reading aloud in disbelief. "Formalized loan agreements? Camille, this is family, not business. Exactly, I said, meeting her gaze. Family should never be business. But you've treated me like a bank. So if it ever happens again, it will be on clear terms. Dad slapped the paper back onto the table, the sound sharp as a gunshot. These are ridiculous demands. Ultimatums! You expect us to sign off on this like some contract? My hands trembled, but I clenched them into fists on my lap. They're not demands. They're boundaries. And yes, I expect you to respect them. Chloe shifted uncomfortably, chewing her lip. She's not wrong, she murmured. Dad turned on her. Excuse me? She raised her chin, though her voice wavered. If Ryan had pulled the stunts we pulled on Camille, I'd have dumped him months sooner. She's right. We treated her like an ATM. The room went still. Even Ethan blinked in surprise. Dad's face reddened, his voice booming. You ungrateful children! Everything I've done was for this family, and this is the thanks I get? Ethan's voice cut through, steady and firm. No, Dad. Everything Camille's done was for this family. You just never noticed. The words landed like a hammer, silencing even Mom. I leaned forward, pressing my palms against the cool wood of the table. This isn't about gratitude or revenge. It's about respect. If you can't meet me here, on these terms, then I can't keep showing up. Not at dinners, not at holidays, not in this family dynamic where I'm only valuable if I pay. Mom's eyes filled, tears clinging to her lashes. Camille, don't say that. We need you. My voice softened. I need you too, Mom. But I need you to see me as more than your safety net. Dad's jaw worked furiously, but for once no words came out. His power was slipping, and he knew it. I pushed the paper back toward him. This is the boundary. Cross it and I'm gone. Stay within it and maybe we can rebuild. For a long moment no one moved. Then Chloe picked up the paper, studying it with a furrowed brow. Ethan nodded silently beside her. Mom dabbed at her eyes, and Dad sat rigid, his silence louder than any outburst. Inside me something shifted. Fear gave way to resolve. For years I'd been waiting for them to choose me, but now I realized I was choosing myself. After the meeting in my apartment ended, I thought silence would follow. I'd drawn the line. Either they respected it or they didn't. But Chloe has never been good with silence. 2 days later, I woke up to a flood of notifications. My phone buzzed with Instagram alerts, tags, comments, messages. Confused, I opened the app. There it was. Chloe's post, a glossy throwback photo of Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Everyone in coordinated outfits, smiling at the camera, me standing slightly apart, a plate in my hand. The caption read, "Missing simpler times when family meant sticking together, not keeping score. Hashtag family first, hashtag heartbroken." The comments made my stomach knot. Stay strong, girl. Some people forget where they came from. Money really changes people. Your sister sounds selfish. Selfish. That word lodged in my throat like glass. I set the phone down, my pulse racing. Then I picked it back up. If she wanted to play this out publicly, so be it. But I wouldn't stoop to her subtweets and pretty filters. I opened Facebook, the platform where most of our extended relatives still lingered, and typed slowly, deliberately. Family is not about who can pick up the bill. It's about respect. Without that, the word family is just another mask people wear while taking advantage of you. I hit post before I could second-guess myself. Within minutes, messages trickled in. A cousin wrote privately, "Camille, I've felt the same way with my parents. Thank you for saying it." Another messaged, "Proud of you for standing up." For the first time in weeks, the comments didn't feel like an attack. They felt like solidarity. Maybe Chloe had the hashtags, but I had the truth. The call came late on a Tuesday evening. Mom's voice cracked through the line. "Camille, it's your father, chest pains, we're at Newton Wellesley." For a second, the world tilted. I grabbed my coat and keys before my brain could catch up with my body. Hospitals had a way of shrinking people, turning even the loudest, most prideful voices into whispers. When I walked into the waiting area, the sterile light made everything look washed out. Mom sat hunched in a chair, her scarf wrinkled in her hands. Chloe scrolled her phone, sunglasses perched even under fluorescent bulbs. Ethan stood by the vending machines, staring at nothing. "Camille," Mom said, rushing up. "They're running tests. He's stable for now." Relief and anger collided in me. "Stable is good," I said. "But let's not pretend this isn't a wake-up call." Chloe snapped, "Really? You want to lecture us here?" I kept my voice even. "No, I want us to face reality. Dad's heart isn't invincible, and neither is this family if we keep pretending money fixes everything." Mom's lip trembled. Ethan finally spoke. "She's right. We've been circling the same lies for years. Maybe this is the moment we stop." The nurse appeared, asking for insurance details. Mom fumbled in her purse, pulling out a card. "Camille," she began, almost instinctively. I held up my hand. "No, not this time. You'll handle it. I'll sit with him, but I won't pay for him." Her eyes widened, then softened. For once, she didn't argue. She nodded slowly. I sank into the chair beside her, the weight of years pressing down. But for the first time, I wasn't holding it alone. 3 days after Dad was discharged, I asked them to meet me at Barney's Diner. Not some expensive steakhouse with polished crystal and silent waiters, just a diner with cracked vinyl booths and a bell above the door that jingled when you walked in. I wanted the setting to make a point before a single word was spoken. I slid into a corner booth 20 minutes early, back against the wall, coffee steaming in front of me. My hands traced the edge of the laminated menu like it was a shield. I rehearsed the words in my head again and again. No more excuses, no more half-truths. The bell jingled, and in they came. Dad first, his blazer a little too tight after the hospital stay, then Mom, eyes red but lips pulled into a smile that didn't reach. Ethan followed, scanning the room like he wanted to be anywhere else. Chloe was last, sunglasses perched on her head despite the cloudy day, phone clutched like a weapon. They hesitated, then slid into the booth opposite me. No hugs, no smiles, just the scraping of chairs and the heavy weight of silence. I broke it first. "Thanks for coming." Dad cleared his throat, adjusting his fork even though we hadn't ordered. "I think it's time we put all this foolishness behind us." The word stung. Foolishness, like 3 years of exploitation was some childish tantrum. Mom reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine. "Camille, families argue. Families forgive. Let's just move forward." Chloe leaned in, her voice honeyed. "We all make mistakes. Maybe we didn't realize how you felt, but is that really worth throwing away years of family?" The subtle blame wrapped in velvet words made my jaw clench. I let the silence hang, their justifications echoing in the space between us. Finally, I set my hands flat on the table, grounding myself. "I didn't walk away because I felt underappreciated," I said. "I walked away because I was underappreciated. I was used." Their eyes flickered. Shock, denial, annoyance, but I pressed on. From my purse, I slid out a folded sheet of paper, weeks in the making. My terms. Boundaries written in black and white. Dad snatched it up first, his eyes scanning, his face darkening with each line. Mom leaned over his shoulder, lips parting. Ethan tried to peek. Chloe just crossed her arms. "Separate checks at all future gatherings. Acknowledgement of what's already happened. And a stop to commentary about my money." Dad slapped the paper down. "Ridiculous demands." "They're not demands," I said, voice calm but steady. "They're boundaries." Silence again. Only the hum of the diner and the sizzle from the grill behind the counter filled the gap. Chloe surprised me first. She looked down at her phone, then back up. For once, her smirk was gone. "She's right." Dad's head snapped toward her. "What?" "If Ryan ever treated me the way we treated Camille, I'd have walked away way sooner," she said, her voice flat but honest. Ethan shifted, finally speaking. I texted her once before all this blew up. Told her I knew we were wrong, I just didn't know how to stop it." His voice cracked and he ducked his head. For the first time, the facade cracked. Mom pressed her handkerchief to her mouth, eyes shining. Dad looked furious, but beneath the red flush, I saw something else. Fear. Not just of losing me, but of losing control. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for respect. If you can't give that, then this— I gestured between us, the booth, the family, doesn't work anymore. The waitress came by, coffee pot in hand. Refill? I smiled, relieved by the interruption. Yes, please. As she poured, I realized something. The power dynamic had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't begging for their approval. I was setting the terms, and whether they accepted or not, that was no longer my burden. The apartment smelled of garlic bread and lasagna when the doorbell rang. I froze for a beat, my hands still dusted with flour from rolling the salad croutons. For weeks, I'd imagined this moment. Who would show up, and who wouldn't? I opened the door to see Mom holding a glass baking dish wrapped in a towel. "Homemade apple crisp," she announced, her voice brighter than her eyes. Behind her, Ethan shifted awkwardly, a bottle of wine dangling from his fingers. No Dad, no Chloe. A knot loosened in my chest. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They entered cautiously, as though crossing a fragile bridge. Mom glanced around my living room, my thrifted bookshelf, the watercolor from college, the table I'd refinished myself. "Your place looks warm," she said softly. "Thanks." "It's mine," I replied, letting the weight of that word hang. Tyler appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Dinner's ready," he said with an easy smile. His presence grounded me. We settled around the small table. No crystal stemware, just mismatched plates and tumblers of tap water, the kind of dinner I could afford, and one that didn't require anyone to prove status. Conversation started stiff, with Ethan asking about work. The Henderson project finally wrapped, I told him. Long nights, but it paid off. He surprised me with a smile. "That's impressive, Camille. I've never said it enough, but I admire how hard you work." The words landed heavier than he knew. My brother, usually the silent bystander, finally acknowledging me. Mom served herself salad, then paused. "This is delicious. You've always been good at making something out of nothing. I forgot that." The air shifted. For once, no one asked about bonuses, promotions, or my bank account. Just food, conversation, and the sound of forks against plates. Halfway through, Mom set down her fork. "Your father thinks you're being stubborn," she said quietly. "And Chloe, she sides with him." I swallowed hard. "And you?" She met my eyes, and for the first time in years, hers didn't carry expectation, only weariness. "I think we failed you. I leaned on you when I should have been protecting you. Tonight, I just wanted to show up without asking for anything." Her honesty cracked something in me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. Ethan cleared his throat. "I don't want to lose my sister because I was too scared to speak up. I can do better." We fell into silence, but it wasn't hostile. It was the quiet of people finally learning to sit with truth. After dinner, Mom insisted on helping with the dishes. She stood beside me at the sink, towel in hand. "One step at a time," she murmured, almost to herself. When they left, the apartment felt different. Not just mine anymore, but a place where something fragile had been planted, a chance, however small, at rebuilding on new terms. I leaned against the door after closing it, heart steady for the first time in months. Not whole, not healed, but steady, and that was enough for tonight. The second scare came without warning. I was in the middle of reviewing a client report when Ethan's name lit up my phone. His voice shook. "Camille, it's Dad. Another episode. The doctors say it's serious this time." My chest tightened. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and raced to Newton Wellesley Hospital. When I arrived, I found Mom in the hallway, her hands twisting her handkerchief. Chloe sat beside her, mascara smudged, looking smaller than I'd ever seen. Ethan paced, eyes hollow. Dad lay pale in the bed, tubes and monitors surrounding him. For the first time in my life, he didn't look like the unshakable patriarch. He looked human, vulnerable. I pulled up a chair. "I'm here," I whispered, more to myself than him. I stayed through the night. adjusting his blanket, holding his water glass, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor. Chloe eventually fell asleep against the wall, and even Mom drifted off, but I didn't move. By dawn, Dad stirred. His voice was barely audible. "Camille, I'm sorry." I blinked, unsure if I'd imagined it, but then he gripped my hand, weak yet determined. "I was blind. Pride. Money. None of it matters. Thank you for not abandoning me when I gave you every reason to." Tears stung my eyes. All I ever wanted was respect, Dad. Not your money, not your approval, just respect. His lips trembled. "You have it. From me. From us." His gaze flicked toward Chloe, who sat upright now, watching, silent. A week later, after his release, we gathered at my apartment. No fancy restaurant, no $1,000 wine list, just my small kitchen, the lasagna I baked, and Mom's apple crisp warming in the oven. Ethan chopped salad greens. Chloe, awkward at first, rolled up her sleeves and buttered garlic bread. Dad sat at the table, thinner but more present than ever. At one point, Chloe glanced at me and said, "I never realized what I was doing. Always expecting, never giving. That ends here. You're my sister, not my sponsor." Her voice cracked on the last word. I swallowed hard. "Then let's start again, but on equal ground." When the food was ready, we sat shoulder to shoulder around the table. The mismatched plates, the laughter breaking through hesitation, the clinking of forks. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. For the first time, no one reached for a wallet, no one waited for me to pay. Instead, Dad raised his water glass. "To Camille," he said, his voice rough. "The one who taught us what family actually means." My throat tightened, but I lifted my glass too. To family, the kind that learns. The toast echoed around my tiny apartment, louder than any applause I could have asked for. I used to believe carrying everyone else was the price of belonging, that if I paid the bills, they'd see my worth. But the truth is, I was buying silence, my own and theirs. It took years, a near loss, and a lot of pain to learn this. Family isn't built on money or appearances. It's built on respect, accountability, and the courage to change. Watching my father soften, seeing Chloe admit her part, and feeling Mom and Ethan step up, it reminded me that people can surprise you when you hold the mirror long enough. Boundaries didn't break us. They gave us a chance to start over. And here's what I want anyone listening to remember. Choosing yourself doesn't mean giving up on love. Sometimes it means saving it. Sometimes it means demanding better so that love can finally breathe. If my story touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength or your own family battles, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe for more true stories, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments, what boundaries have you had to set to protect your peace, and how did it change your life?